evening, welcome to the 7 o'clock evening news. I'm John Shelton. We begin with the main headlines. Hundreds of extra troops are being deployed around Paris after 3 days of terror in the French capital killed 17 people and left the nation in shock. A suicide bomber strikes a mosque in Pakistan's garrison city of Rawalpindi, killing 7 people and wounding several others. North Korea says it was willing to suspend nuclear tests if the US agrees to call off military drills held jointly with Seoul. And pro-Russian separatists intensify attacks against government troops ahead of peace talks mooted to take place next week. Security forces are deployed around Paris, guarding places of worship and tourist sites and preparing for what's likely to be a huge demonstration to show unity against extremists. The measures took place as the French president chaired an emergency security meeting today aimed at thwarting a repeat of the attacks around Paris by Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists. More details in the following report by Dina Nasser.
French officials have also said there was a connection between the Montrouge shooting and the massacre at Charlie Hebdo on Wednesday. Police also launched an assault yesterday on the 2 Charlie Hebdo shooting suspects, brothers Sharif Kouachi and Saad Kouachi, reportedly killing both. A hostage the men were holding at a printing shop in downtown of Dimartin-en-Gaule, around 12 kilometers from Paris's main airport, Charles de Gaulle, has been released and is unhurt. The Kouachi brothers are suspected of killing 12 people at the Paris-based satirical weekly, 8 journalists, 2 police officers, a maintenance worker and a visitor. 11 people were also wounded, 4 of them seriously. Police have named a suspected accomplice in the murder of the policewoman in Montrouge as Hayat Boumediene, describing her as armed and dangerous. She remains at large. 9 people have so far been detained in the investigation, and police in France are on high alert as they hunt for the accomplices of the gunmen. President François Hollande praised the police but also warned of further threats. After a security cabinet meeting today, Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve said France would remain on its highest state of alert for the next few weeks. Tight security would be in place for a unity march in Paris on Sunday, which will be attended by British and German as well as French leaders, added Mr. Cazeneuve. The suspects in 3 attacks, who knew each other, had been linked to previous terrorist activities, and one had fought or trained with Al-Qaeda in Yemen, which claimed ownership yesterday of this week's newspaper massacre.
Moving to Iraq, as the snow covers the mountains around the city of Dohuk in Iraq's northern Kurdish region, many internally displaced families are struggling to keep warm in tent camps. Hundreds of families are now living in a makeshift tent city, an offshoot of the main camp in Kanki, after being forced out of their homes by IS group fighters last year. Kanki tent camp has around 19,000 people living there, many of them from Sinjar region. The lives of many Iraqi refugees in the Middle East are endangered by storms, snow and freezing cold weather. Also, funding shortfalls coupled with the sudden and large increase in the number of displaced means that the assistance provided will not be able to cover all the needs. Turkey rounded up more than 300 Syrian refugees in Ankara, tearing down makeshift shelters in what authorities described as an operation to send vulnerable families to camps as winter temperatures plunge. Spokesman for Turkish Disaster Management Agency AFAD said that Turkey has removed 3,000 refugees nationwide and sent them to a specially built camp in Gaziantep in the southeast of the country. AFAD says Turkey hosts 1.7 million Syrian refugees, of whom 230,000 are in camps with access to facilities such as schools. Storms and blizzards in the Middle East this week have raised concerns for Syrian refugees as extra precautions have been taken to protect those in the Turkish camps. The United Nations says it will host a new round of peace talks between Libya's rival factions in Geneva next week. The United Nations Support Mission in Libya, or UNSMIL, announced in a statement today the fresh round of political dialogue would be held at the UN office in the Swiss city. The agreement was reached after wide and intensive consultations with the parties by Bernardino Leon, UNSMIL's head, who is also the UN Chief Special Representative for Libya, over the past several weeks. In the statement, the UN said the primary objective of the dialogue will be to reach agreement on the management of the remainder of the transitional period, including the formation of a unity government that enjoys wide support. The statement also stated that the political dialogue may pave the way for a stable environment for the constitutional process in which a new permanent constitution can be adopted. A suicide bomber has struck a mosque in Pakistan's garrison city of Rawalpindi, killing 7 people and wounding several others. Police said that the attacker blew himself up when he was stopped at the gate of the mosque. The blast occurred during a celebration to mark the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Pakistan Interior Ministry, Chaudhry Nissa, condemned the attack and declared an emergency in all hospitals in the Rawalpindi area, and security has been beefed up following the attack. An affiliated faction of the Pakistani Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. North Korea said today it was willing to suspend nuclear tests if the United States agreed to call off annual military drills held jointly with South Korea, saying the exercises were the main reason for the tension on the Korean peninsula. The proposal comes at a time of tensions between North Korea and the US over a Sony movie depicting an assassination attempt on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The North's official Korean Central News Agency said the government proposed the US what it calls a crucial step to ease animosities and remove the danger of war prompted by desires to pave the way for a reunification with South Korea this year, which marks the 70th anniversary of the rivals division. North Korea conducted nuclear tests in 2006, 2009 and 2013. The 4th test would mark another defiant response to US-led international pressure on Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear program. The foreign ministers of France, Germany, Russia and Ukraine will meet in Berlin on Monday to discuss the situation in eastern Ukraine and the implementation of a peace plan as rebels stepped up attacks in eastern Ukraine and killed 4 Ukrainian soldiers following the arrival of a Russian convoy. The ministers held a telephone conference and agreed to meet to continue their efforts to resolve the crisis. The 4 deaths interrupted a period of relative calm that began with a prisoner exchange deal last month with the rebels. Meanwhile, Ukraine violated the terms of a $3 billion Russian loan, but Moscow did not yet decide whether to demand early repayment. The Russian remarks on the debt come ahead of key peace talks to resolve the conflict in eastern Ukraine and may be intended to increase economic pressure on Kiev with a view to influencing those talks. More than 4,700 people have been killed in fighting between Kiev's forces and pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine since last April. Investigators searching for black boxes in the crashed AirAsia plane lifted the tail portion out of the Java Sea today. The tail was hoisted from a depth of about 30 meters using inflatable bags that were attached to the rear of the aircraft and a crane to lift it onto a rescue ship. The operation came 2 weeks after the plane went down. 48 bodies were retrieved until now. Search teams believe most of the remains may still be inside the fuselage of the plane, which has yet to be found. The recent storm that hit Jerusalem brought rain and strong winds to the center of the country, but the capital also saw a few centimeters of snow. Larger amounts of snow also accumulated in the Golan Heights and in Safed. The weather caused several major roads to be closed to traffic because of flash flood warnings. Jerusalem's municipal officials said the decision of closing schools and roads was made in cooperation with the city's parents' union and meant to avoid risking the children's safety. The Mediterranean Sea is expected to be particularly turbulent, with waves reaching up to 6 meters. Taking a look at the weather in the US, a bitterly cold weather continued to sweep across much of the United States. As of this morning, 6 to 8 inches of snow were common reports in the western third of lower Michigan. Grand Rapids reported 7 inches and Newaygo County 9 inches. Scottville North to Traverse City, Antrim County, Charlevoix and Bliss are all reporting 7 inches of new snow as of 6 a.m. today. Meanwhile, other US regions also experienced freezing weather conditions, including Illinois, where local residents wrapped up warm as they waited to board public transport. Heavy snowfall swept the Midwest American city since Tuesday, bringing the daily temperature down to minus 20 degrees Celsius. The American SpaceX firm says its experiment to bring part of its Falcon rocket down to a soft landing on a floating sea platform did not work and blasted off with supplies. The vehicle was launched on a mission to send a cargo capsule to the International Space Station. However, once the first stage of the rocket completed its part of this task, it tried to make a controlled return. SpaceX intends to keep trying. If this kind of capability can be proven, it promises to dramatically lower launch costs in the future. This is the first American resupply mission to the orbiting platform since October's spectacular explosion of a freighter system operated by competitor Orbital Sciences Corporation. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. That's all our news for now. We'll finish off with the main headlines. Hundreds of extra troops are being deployed around Paris after 3 days of terror in the French capital killed 17 people and left the nation in shock. A suicide bomber strikes a mosque in Pakistan's garrison city of Rawalpindi, killing 7 people and wounding several others. North Korea says it was willing to suspend nuclear tests if the US agrees to call off military drills held jointly with Seoul. And pro-Russian separatists intensify attacks against government troops ahead of peace talks mooted to take place next week.